everyone. I am Pamela from the registration desk of Victoria Literacy Center. Just letting you know that registration has been extended to the 19th of September. So parents, what that means is if you are registering your child for full-time school with VLC or even additional classes to reinforce what is being offered in public schools, your child will have access to virtual live sessions as well as access to online resources based on the Ministry of Education curriculum requirements. So yes, there is still time for you to register your child. You can send us a message or contact our office at 272-1987.
Welcome to the Caribbean Parenting Digital Show. This talk show is presented each week by host Alina Lewis and features guests from our Caribbean islands right here on this channel. As we discuss family finances, proverbial principles, child guidance, and academics at home, guests join in weekly to have conversations that give helpful tips about how to be a better parent. Like, subscribe, follow, and share as you tune in each week for new episodes of the Caribbean Parenting Digital Show.
Good day and welcome to the Caribbean Parenting Digital Show. Now, through this platform, we have conversationals that give us helpful tips about how to be a better parent each day. Now, today we will be discussing World Suicide Prevention Day, which is an awareness day observed on September 10th every year in order to provide worldwide commitment and action to prevent suicides with various activities around the world since 2003. Now, as of recent, WHO releases that challenges represented by social stigma, the taboo to openly discuss suicide, and low availability of data are still to date obstacles which lead to poor data quality for both suicide and suicide attempts. Of course, given the sensitivity of suicide and the illegality of suicidal behavior in some countries, it is likely that underreporting and misclassification are greater problems for suicide than for most other causes of death. The World Health Organization estimates that over 800,000 people take their own life each year. That's one person every 40 seconds. This year, the theme for World Suicide Prevention Day is working together to prevent suicide. And of course, today's discussion is meant to help us understand suicide and how it can be prevented. Joining us now is Lifeline's representative, Lucy Gabriel. We want to say, Lucy, thank you for taking time to join us this afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
I'm all right. And, I'm not going to spend a lot of time. She is a representative from Lifeline, and we're going to get straight into the discussions. Today being World Suicide Prevention Day. And we're going to go right away into the contributing factors of suicide, because people tend to have their own perceptions, their own thinking of suicide. But Lucy, can you tell us what are some of the contributing factors of suicide?
Well, the thing is, if let's say Trinidad has 1.3 million people, there are 1.3 million reasons why somebody would commit suicide. It's a very personal thing. Person gets to the stage where they feel that whatever it is that has triggered it, they just cannot live with it anymore. And it can be something that's highly personal. And basically the fact about it is that the person gets to the stage where they feel emotionally completely separated from others. And the only solution to deal with their hurt is to kill themselves. So they do that.
All right. And you mentioned issues that may arise. And you said 1.3 million reasons. And could
Well, we
you
have a
just...
population of 1.3 million people. So for every person we have, somebody has an individual reason for wanting to do that. It's with the sense of self, whatever it is that has happened, it challenges that person's sense of self. For example, if you're talking about children, that the sense of self is built on I beat everybody in exams, and I feel I'm not going to do that, and I can't take the fact that I'm going to fail my exams, everything's dependent on it, then I'm likely to want to kill myself. But it may to somebody else look like a totally unreasonable reason.
Yes, indeed, because far too often we have reports and we hear reports of, young people and even adults as well, and there is no reason. And even sometimes when you hear about what may have happened, you think that it is not a good enough reason, but no reason at all. That's the thing. And even as
there's always a reason. The newspaper reports don't tell you. And the thing is that the person may have hid it very well, even from their family. So they would be surprised and say, well, I didn't know there was anything wrong. So you are honored if somebody will tell you, this is the way I feel. And the tragedy is that people say it and nobody takes them for granted. They don't take them on. They say, well, that's stupidness. You wouldn't do that. And move on.
Wow. And I mean, I'm coming into this and I'm chatting with you from a place of experiencing and being very close to someone who would have taken their own life. And even when you think about the contributing factors, and you're right there, what you said, that many a times that people, even in the home, they are unaware of what is really going on because the individuals, they are able to hide it so well. And, and as we go a little deeper in this particular area, in terms of those contributing factors, because you said there are many reasons, and if you can just list out some of those. You mentioned exams being one of them, but what are some of the other areas by which you find that people tend to contemplate suicide and even actually commit that act of suicide? What are some of the other things?
Well, as I say, I would summarize it. Anything that makes the person question who they are, lose that sense of who they are. From one extreme, it would be like, for example, men are particularly sensitive to that if they feel they're going to be impotent, because that is very important to a man, and therefore he loses that sense of himself. If again, let us go look at men again, that it's a man who he's lost his company, he's lost all his money, but his money and his company represented his deepest sense of self, and he cannot get it back. It may be, for example, a woman who her husband has left her for a younger woman, or her whole sense of herself may have been buried, and this is more old-fashioned than now, may have been buried in, perhaps buried is the wrong word, may have been fixed on she's a wife, her social position. She's going to lose social position. Anything that threatens somebody's innate sense of themselves. There's a critical difference between children doing it and adults doing it. A child feels something and it's very strong right now. I can't take this, and they have very little experience of overcoming emotional hurdles, and they'll say, I will kill myself, but don't really think of how permanent that is and just do it. And I've seen reports where in other parts of the world they're starting to catch up with us for nearly 50 years in Trinidad. What has been surprising is that we have in our official statistics 2 or 3 children a year between 10 and 14 who are considered to have committed suicide, who have died by suicide. Let me not say committed. By suicide. The rest of the world is catching up with us. The largest number of suicides were by people between 15 to 29. And it's more men than women. It used to be 5 men to 2 women. It's getting more to be 3 men to 2 women. But it is that when you really come down to it, it can be from their families, very rarely. And now it's coming to be a bit more connected to their jobs, but the family relationships, pain, things that happened in childhood that were unresolved, and they now surface. And it has led to bad relationships, etc., sense of self, and something happens. That is what you say, that somebody may have. There are lots of people who may have had traumatic childhood occurrences and live to die in their bed at 85. So it is not just that, but something happens that triggers it. That's what you call perturbation, that sense of, I can't take it. But then they could still get over it if their worldview does not constrict to this is the only solution to my problem. I will kill myself. And that is where the person may have been having these problems for a long time. And then everybody takes them for granted, and that's where the family can miss it. Because, ironically, once the person's made the decision, they calm down. What happens when you have something that's bothering you and you've settled it in your mind? What happens to your behavior? You get very calm. You calm down. So people will turn around and say, but she used to be crying and this and that, but in the last 2 weeks she was fine. She invited all her friends out. She had a good time. And you mean she did this? And we'd say that was the time you should have watched her. She made up her mind. It's a problem solved, matter fixed. The other thing too is people say, I'm going to kill myself, and nobody takes them up. Don't be so damn stupid, man. You won't do that. Until they do it. So that it could be blatant. It could be things the person isn't sleeping. And for some people, a lot of planning goes into it. People wake up and find that they have sorted out all their affairs. They've changed their bank accounts. They've made sure who can access their money and who they can't. They've given away things. They went to see people and said goodbye, and the person didn't realize they were coming to see them to say goodbye. They would do erratic things, like, for example, turning up to visit somebody in the middle of the night. Well, not on the COVID, but still middle of the night. But there are things that people really only notice looking back, not forward. So we are honored that when somebody feels suicidal, they will call, and we deliberately say, this is what we do. We're the only organization in Trinidad that says, this is what we do. We can talk to everybody else, but this is what we do. So people who are really at highest risk of suicide will say, I can talk to you about this, because to them, that is the great unmentionable. They're coming to tell you something that they may feel is so shameful, so bad, they can't tell anybody, and they would prefer to kill themselves than to mention it. But because we say that, it opens the door. They will say, this is what's bothering. But we must also undertake, and we stick to it, and we have done for 42 years. We will tell nobody what you tell us. We're not asking for your name. It is confidential and completely anonymous. The fact that somebody has called Lifeline and what they've said remains confidential within Lifeline even after death. The person must give their permission for us to discuss it with anybody. It makes us vulnerable in a sense, because people can accuse us of things and we can't reply. it is confidential. Why not? Because it could cost somebody else's life. They may be thinking, I could call when they find out, but you tell somebody about me. It is very, very important to the people who call that we will tell nobody. I don't care who you are, for whatever reason, because that is somebody's life. The person, then the feeling goes up and down. Not completely stable. Somebody who may for years have seen their high point is everybody else's normal. And you say, well, man, psychologist, psychiatrist says, it's okay, that's their normal state, they always. And then you turn around and somebody comes and sees you and says, you say, yes, last night so-and-so killed herself. So it's recognizing that it is sensitive. And the survey we did showed that I don't know for the rest of the world, but I do know for Trinidad and Tobago, that being suicidal is linked to people thinking a person who's suicidal is not only insane, but violently so, and are afraid of them. And therefore, we who are Lifeline and say, this is what we do, we are the last and least funded. We get 0 point, we've worked it out, less than half a cent in the dollar required to run this service. That is what we get. We run it with whatever resources we have because it has to be available 24/7. Nobody is going to allow you to talk to them for 5 hours, starting 1 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock in the morning. We will, until that person feels they're okay to go another day. Not forever, but another day, until they do. So if somebody says to you, I want to kill myself, listen. Don't hear them, listen. Why? And let them tell you, because you're then bridging the emotional gap, which is what allows them, major factor in allowing them to do it. You're bridging that emotional gap. It's like the woman who says, my children are grown up, my husband's about, and nobody will listen to me. And she's in tears. She says, nobody will listen to me. It's like the man who once again, he's retired. His wife doesn't really want him in her house. She was very happy all the years for him not to be around. He's under her feet. His children are not accustomed to talking to him. So he's by himself. He no longer has a purpose. He doesn't have the job anymore. The friends that went with the job, he doesn't have them. That'll happen. So that's it, Pamela. Sorry.
It's all right. I mean, that is what this program is about, having conversations and helpful tips. And this is one of those topics when we talk about suicide, and we keep saying it is very sensitive, and it is rarely all of those things that you would have discussed. Basically, when we look at our population as a whole, and this is something that they really and truly, they may think that they understand, but there is so much more to understanding suicide. And, in terms of, even as we continue our discussion, Lucy, what should citizens understand about suicide and suicide prevention based on all that you have said? Because I'm sure that you would have opened a lot of eyes now in listening, for those that are listening to the program, in terms of suicide. And because even in speaking, and I was even, I was thinking of people that I knew would have died by suicide. And you talked about, we remember after the fact, we look back on the changes that take place. So what should citizens understand about suicide and suicide prevention?
That it's very subtle, that the person can hide it from you, but the signs are there. And it's, as I say, it is as blatant as saying, I want to kill myself. It is the person can withdraw totally. They don't talk to anybody in their family. Everybody can be having a good time and they don't attend. They clear up, give away their things and act in what they would do. And this is the most painful part. If, as the people they are closest to, that they think would stop them, they don't go near them and they don't tell them. But you wouldn't, for some people, they would have done the clearing of their affairs over such a long time that you would not notice that that's what they're doing, but that's what they did. And it's after it's been done. And the other thing is that it is the person's sense that no, it won't matter. They'll get over it. They'll be able to deal with it. But you don't. Because that is a grief from somebody having died by taking their own lives, is a special kind of grief. And people, the person who's about to do it convinces themselves, it's all right. My family will be better off without me. And it's the sense that no, they won't. It's really gonna hurt. So, listening to people, talking to them, letting them talk to you, that is what listening is about rather than hearing. And the small things, and if you're concerned, you can ring us. We're available 24/7. But pay attention. You can say something as simple as, you don't look too well today. Or some of the jokes people make. Now, the mammagism can be too near the bone. But it's being open to people, being able to talk to you. Does that answer your question?
It does. And, again, as you say, just being open to listen and not just to hear what is being said.
Yes.
Yeah, not just hearing what is being said, but being able to listen and to ask a question, why? What's happening? And it takes nothing really out of us to do that. It really does not take anything.
You see, in ordinary social interactions, people don't really want to know. If they say to you, how are you? And you ever say how you are, they avoid you. So it's to say, how are you? And be prepared to listen and to keep it confidential. That they can say, yes, I think the Samaritans found in England that they did a series where they said, are you okay? If you see somebody, let's say even on the bus station, you say, you're right. And you may open the door, you start the conversation. But be willing, when you start the conversation, to really listen that, no, I am not okay. And really and truly, again, you say, what are the signs? One of the things that really hits people is to realize that perhaps the most suicidal person you know is the heart and soul of the party. They're always happy, they're always looking after everybody, and they're running around. But you never really look beneath that surface. It can be the heart and soul of the party. They go always out, but nothing about themselves. They don't do that. They're very, very private. Look for that. Age, gender. Men don't talk about their feelings, but men are more likely to attempt to kill themselves and succeed than women. Women are more likely to talk about what's bothering But somebody once said, when men attempt it, they're very thorough. So 100 men may attempt it and 95 will die. 350 women will attempt it and 35 will die. That is the difference. But it's being sensitive and noticing significant changes in the person's behavior. Person withdraws, doesn't take part in normal family conversations, meetings. You invite them, they're not coming. And even if they come, everybody's by themselves and they've gone off somewhere else. Don't come. It could be like that.
Yeah. And you mentioned withdrawal, and you said also that some of them tend to be the life of the party.
Yeah, life and soul of the party.
Yes, the one that is in the middle, the one that is laughing, the one that seems the happiest, the one that seems like life is great.
Yes, always.
And then,
no complaints.
Yes. And we are continuing again this discussion on World Suicide Prevention Day. And my next question to you, Lucy, in terms of the prevalence of suicide among young people and teens, even in our own space of Trinidad and Tobago, can you give us an indication of where those statistics may fall, the prevalence among children and teens?
I am reluctant to do that because it's years I have not seen up-to-date statistics on Trinidad. PAHO has some, but CSO used to be very good at that. So you could get the figures for the past 2 years, not since. But I think it is still stuck. The rest of the world has caught up with us in that the bulk of our suicides are 15 to 29. And it's getting to the stage where we have more people who are 50 to 59 who are doing it. They're the fastest growing group. But still, the major one is 15 to 29 and men. So the fact that, for example, over 50% of our calls are from men means that we have made a significant impact on it, because men will call and talk to us. And if they have a problem, they will exhibit the whole range of feelings about it. They will say the things that hurt the most. Okay. They will say.
Right, and you did mention statistics there, and based on what we were reading previously from the World Health Organization, that is a challenge in terms of statistics and so on. And it actually estimates that over 800,000 people take their own life each year. And they quantify that, and they said that's a suicide committed every 40 seconds.
40 seconds, yeah.
Every 40 seconds, and that is,
yeah.
it is shocking, it is startling, it is and it is preventable. It is
preventable and it takes something as simple as being emotionally sensitive. But more and more we have a society worldwide, when you say it, people are no longer sensitive to other people's feelings. The way people, the way public affairs are conducted, the way young people talk to people, etc. It's too good.
Yes, and I wanted, even as we speak about this, Lucy, in terms of parents, and getting to the heart of the matter, even in the home, what should they understand about the likelihood of suicide among children and teens in Trinidad and Tobago?
It's high. It always has been. The rest of the world is catching up with us. Because when we started doing this in 1977, the highest rate of suicide was among those over 50. Now I'm reading figures that are saying it's 15 to 29, and I say, well, they caught up. Because that's what we've always had. And if it's in the home, it's the way parents relate to children. And it can be, and you see, we've switched from authoritarian to permissive. Somewhere in the middle of that is authoritative. And either authoritarian or permissive can be as equally lethal. The major point is the balance for the child. It can be that the demands, for example, for academic excellence may be too much. That instead of allowing a student to choose what they want to do based on their strengths, you say, okay, it's the family thing that you have to be a doctor, you have to be a lawyer, you have to be an engineer, because that is what people in this family do. So you do that, whether you want to do it or you don't want to do it, too bad. But the whole family prestige also is based, and let us look at C. Did you get placed in the right elite school? Because the whole family prestige is based on that. So, same thing with CSEC, CAPE, etc. There's that. Did you get married? Who did you marry? What kind of friends you have? You see the battle over friends. That can happen. It can be it can be from authoritarian. Authoritative is don't do so and so because of so and so, and you have clear reasons for the discipline, to where there's none. And the children who are delinquent, who say, well, we had a thing on that years ago, and we asked students who were in YTC, in St. Michael's, etc., and we said, what would you say to parents? You know what they said? They said parents should have the guts to fight. Understand? Whereas a lot of people who attended that same conference would say, no, you should be permissive, etc., but the children didn't think that. Do you really, as my parent, care about me, the person? That's what it said. Do you really care about me, the person? And it's not just, are you strict? For some children, if you're strict, you don't care. For others, if you're not strict, you don't care. So it's how they interpret that and at what stage in their development.
Right, and as you talk about that and you explain, because I was just about to ask you to explain, you talked about authoritarian and you talked about permissive, and young people tend to have an understanding or an interpretation, and the question was asked, as you said, of these young people, and they said parents should be willing to fight. Now, right. I want you to go a little deeper into that. What could you explain? What is it? When they say that they should have the guts to fight, what exactly does that mean?
That means when they're acting out, for example, you would think that all children would appreciate the fact that if their parents didn't care, if they got home at 10 o'clock at night, is that right? No. Same boy would turn around and tell you, no, I could get home at 10 o'clock at night. My parents didn't care. I could do what I like. If my parents really cared about me, they would have stopped me. So there's that balance.
Yes.
Because children grow. And the thing is, with being permissive, you are expecting wisdom of a child. Let us define wisdom. Wisdom is a unique mix of experience and knowledge. A child has neither. So yes, you talk to the child, you understand, etc., but you have to have the wisdom to look at that child 10 years down the road. If you teach children, they say, you're too strict, you're this, you're that, and that same child turns around when the world falls apart for the parent, for the child, and says, "But mommy, that you should have said, you shouldn't have let me do that." So it is a catch-22. But it is the parent. There's a reason there's a parent. Wisdom is required of the parent, not the child. When you are authoritarian, you take no account of the child's feelings. When you're permissive, you let them do what they like. But you see, being authoritative demands wisdom. And the point is, too, you are likely to make mistakes because, unfortunately, when you have a child, they do not hand you a manual that says on day 66 of year 7, so and so will happen, and this is what you will do, and this will be the consequences of what you do. You learn by error and error and error. But we have switched to expecting wisdom of a child. Define what wisdom is. It is a unique mixture of experience and knowledge. Listen, look at the child's reactions, etc. But the ultimate decision is the parent's. And whatever you do as a parent, put yourself in place, you are going to be blamed. You're wrong. That's it. So eventually that parent has to go with their guts. What do I read? And really basically choose that I will be blamed. I prefer to be blamed for doing what I believed at the time to be right, than to be blamed in retrospect for doing what I thought was wrong. I am not good.
Yes. And
yes. And I have to put up my hand and say that as a parent, I was wrong in retrospect. So I must ask forgiveness. That's what it is.
Yes,
but
indeed. And
you see, I just wish really most parents would tell you that the child came with a manual. I think you should go to the mother and parent shop and say, "Look, I need a manual, right?"
If there was a manual, then we would not be having these types of discussions, and we're moving into we would not be having these type of conversations. That is why there is a need. And we are moving into now the question and answer segment. Of course, we are getting questions from some of our viewers, and and even as we get into that. And the first question that came in, are there any preventative measures that can be undertaken for a person who is susceptible to suicide?
It depends on how suicidal you think the person is. If you think the person is in imminent danger of taking their lives, you can put them at home under a suicide watch. But that means somebody has to stay with them all the time. You don't even let them go to the bathroom on their own. You stand outside the door. The other thing is, if you can, also, you can take the person in to any one of our major health facilities, Mount Hope. And some people would not like to go to St. Anne's and go and get a psychological assessment. If you have the money, and it costs a lot of money, you can take them to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. You can do that. But again, for all of them, professional or not, it comes down to, will the person have time to sit and listen? I have asked psychiatrists that and said, okay, we've had people called us and we think they're very suicidal. And what would you do? They said, well, apart from prescribed medication, we would listen.
Yes.
But if you think the person and ask the question, and that is where somebody who's a member of the family may be at a great disadvantage, because they may not say, but if they do say, you're afraid, they're cutting themselves, etc., etc., take them into Mount Hope or into St. Anne's So St. Anne's, you can check it out, and they would do an assessment. But if you don't have that, put the person, until you can, put the person on a suicide watch. You do not, you stay with, there's somebody with them all the time. You talk, you let them talk, and it is their feelings. You listen and you stare into the person's feelings. You know, if your car is skidding, to stop its skid, you stare into the skid. So you ask, they tell you something, you say, this makes you very angry, and let them express the anger. This, you feel ashamed about that. The feeling words, and that opens the door and reestablishes the connection.
Thank you so much for that, Lucy. And we're moving along with the questions as they come. And the next question here is, while listening to someone who says that they want to commit suicide, should you just listen or make an attempt to show them why they should not do so?
Look at the question. It is not just listen. It's very difficult to listen, actually. It's letting the person tell you how they feel. When you tell them why they should not do so, you may actually put them on a guilt trip that pushes them over. Let them tell you. For example, a woman who, and this says that I have had to have a hysterectomy. I can no longer have children. I will kill myself. But she has 2 children. She's a professional, she has 2 children, he tells you that. The temptation would be to give her all the reasons, all the fantastic things she has, and da-da-da-da-da-da. But to her, it is a loss that cannot be replaced. She could have gone for the next 30 years having to use contraception, but she wakes up and finds that in this modern day and age, to her, what defines her is her ability to have children, and she cannot have them. Life is useless without it. It's too much pain. Listen to the pain. And that is the scary part, to accept that no matter how much you listen to somebody, how much you talk, they control their life.
Yes.
You can listen from now till whenever, and they'll even tell you, thank you very much for listening, etc. But I can't take it. And you'll wake up and find the deed has been done. That is very difficult to deal with. Very. But it is their right. You can comfort, you can help them, and you can say, at least share with me what makes you feel this. And then if you can connect with them, you have a chance. Basically, Monica Dickens put it very well. She said, do not be afraid when you have to listen to somebody who's suicidal. If you are lucky, you will be allowed to be present whilst they save their own life. Yes. That's what it is. But if you get into showing them why not, you're arguing, aren't you? You're fighting with them. You are dealing with your feelings, your fears about what they're going to do, not them. The focus becomes on you and what you think of it, not them.
And I love what you have said there, because for parents that are listening, it is not making you the center of it all. It is about the individual. Mm-hmm. It is about them and their feelings and their emotions. And the next question that comes from one of our viewers is, if you suspect or sense someone wants to commit suicide, should you confront them? What then, if not, what can you do in that instance?
Start the conversation. So you're looking down. Something's really bothering you. You see, in our case, in Lifeline's case, this is why we say, it's an old-fashioned phrase, we befriend the despairing and the suicidal. People ring us and apologize that they're not suicidal, and we say, that's okay. But you open the door. You say, do you feel like killing yourself? Do you feel so bad? And they'll say yes. And you say, have you ever tried it? Not even have you got plans to do it? Having the random thought is one thing, but you see the actual plans to do it is a higher risk. But you make it is acceptable to talk about the unmentionable, and it opens the door. It releases some of that feeling. Again, people don't want to talk about it because of their fear of what will happen. They are powerless. To confront somebody who's suicidal, let me put it to you this way. It is as if the person has committed a crime. They have been the prosecutor. They have been the jury that has brought in the guilty sentence, and they've been the judge. And they are about to be the executioner. And you are all there is for the defense. That's what it is. And so that is why your listening skills, that's all you have. You don't have anything else. They have all the control. And particularly if it's on the phone, you don't know who they are, where they are.
Yes.
What you have is, tell me about it.
Yes.
Tell me, how do you feel? And if you can make that connection, and you can't always make it, then you help the person. But it takes your total attention, and it takes respect for the person. Because that's another thing that does it in close relationships. The person feels total and complete lack of respect. Nobody listens to me. You see, it's my wife and her children in the house doing what they want to do and are just there. They don't miss me.
Yes. Yes.
Understand?
Yes, I do.
Total lack of respect.
I do.
And what you, the listener, do in the time you're listening is to listen. Give your total attention, and it's using, there's both passive and active listening, going backwards and forwards from the two. You may spend 7 hours listening to somebody and you've said no more than yes. So that, said, so did this make you feel A, B, C, D? And before the words are out of your mouth, for them to say yes, and da 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 da. And before they know it, they've told you something that hurt them way back 30, 40 years ago in
That's right. That's right.
And at last, and you say, but I've never told anybody else this. And they start to cry. The emotion has been released. The chance that they will go on to kill themselves has been reduced.
Yes. And that
but it is a skill.
Yes.
That's what it is.
That is what it is. And that is what Lifeline. That is what Lifeline is.
That's what we do.
It is a lifeline.
That's what we exist.
And even though we have come to the end of our program, I just want you to take a minute to give your final words. And also for those that are listening, and if they may have those thoughts in their mind, they may be thinking because of whatever situation that they may be going through, how can they get in touch with Lifeline?
Well, we have 2 toll-free numbers and one that is free if you have a flow line. It's 800-5588 or 866-5433. And we have a virtual PBX if somebody else is on either of those lines. That virtual PBX searches, can't get somebody immediately, and then refers you to the 220-3636 number. But we do everything in our power to make sure there is somebody there 24/7. If you can't get through, it isn't because somebody isn't there. If somebody's talking to us, we cannot pick up the phone, put them on hold, and talk to somebody else. That is enough for them to kill themselves. So the phone may ring, and they're on the phone talking to somebody who's crying and very distressed. They have to let it ring, which is why we do not appeal for help. We're always begging for it. And whatever it is we get, we do the most we can with it. But we are committed to being there 24/7. That is what it is. The availability is the critical thing about it, and the concentration on suicide. We're not really concentrating on anything else. We can deal with all the other things, but this is what we do. Nobody else in Trinidad does that. We have done that since 1978, and we have paid the price. We are the last and least funded. And we're very happy to...
I definitely want to thank you for just mentioning that, because through these conversations, we hope that those that are listening will know and realize the importance of organizations like this in society, and especially with, well, the lack of statistics that we have, but we know that we do have some. And again, we have come to the end of this program. I want to say thank you, Lucie, for joining us, Lucie from Lifeline, and also thank you for taking time to join us for this episode of the Caribbean Parenting Digital Show. As a bi-weekly talk show, it is streamed digitally each Wednesday and Sunday right here on this channel. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate that you've tuned in for this episode of the Caribbean Parenting Digital Show, and trust that you are now better equipped as a parent to support your children and, by extension, your family, based on the information shared. I am Pamela Ramcharan, and until the next time, take care.